Welcome to the video that will probably get me at least one community guideline strike. After releasing my initial gun grab video, I realized from the comments that I had made a mistake. The focus of the video was whether or not we the people could survive a gun grab in the sense that the mainstream media has led us to believe it would take place. I take the blame for making a video based on boots on the ground kicking in doors and taking firearms at gunpoint. That's the vision they want you to have when you hear the term gun grab, because if you are focused on and fighting against a method that won't even be implemented, then you're not going to pay attention to how it actually is being done. The actual gun grab has been in effect since before the Newtown false flag. Anyone that has done any amount of research knows that event never took place and was nothing more than a drill passed off as a real event. Either that or the alleged victims rose from the dead to perform at a Super Bowl halftime show. So if the plan isn't to kick in doors and take our firearms by force, how do they plan on accomplishing it? That method would be far too bloody, and many commenters are correct. People, even those completely against the Second Amendment, would not be okay with seeing fellow citizens slaughtered. That's why it won't be the method they use. The actual method they would, and already are using, is far more subtle and effective. Think back to the late 1980s, early 1990s, and prior. Think about society and our culture at that time. Many of you that are under the age of 45 to 50 may have a difficult time believing that not only was this considered normal behavior, but that it really wasn't all that long ago that it was. At the time, nobody, and I mean nobody, gave it a second thought. It was as normal as seeing someone looking at their cell phone today. People will claim the reason smoking in public places has been removed from our society is for health reasons. Nobody gives two shits about your health. If that was the case, alcohol, which causes far more death and crime than cigarettes ever will, wouldn't be promoted as being socially acceptable. Smoking was removed as a social experiment, a way to prove a society's entire culture can be flipped using the right methods. The method being used against us is simple and has been implemented successfully for decades. Normalize, demonize, and use the people as a weapon against themselves. The idea is to get the people to do the work for you by changing how the majority of the population perceives a specific topic. It's all about public perception. Try lighting up a cigarette in a restaurant today and see what happens. Light up a cigarette on a commercial airliner once you get to cruising altitude and see how that works out for you. Both of these acts were the norm 30 years ago, and nobody would bat an eye if you had done either of those things. As a matter of fact, many of the people around you would be doing this even if you weren't. Smoking in public is an example of demonizing a behavior. What about normalizing a behavior? This is just as effective. The next time you are in a public setting, use the word queer, faggot, or homo, and see how people around you react. Say the word retard and see how well that goes over. People have been conditioned that we must be tolerant of any behavior, no matter how barbaric, sinful, or disgusting it may be. They have also been programmed with a Pavlov's dog response to certain words, as we have also seen. Most never stop to really think about what that word or behavior actually entails. What goes into the act itself? What does the actual act of homosexuality look like? Their only concern is that they are not seen as intolerant or labeled biased against a particular group or ideology. Unless we're talking about Christianity or accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Then you will be targeted or labeled a Bible thumper or a nut job that worships an invisible man in the sky. They are able to target individual topics and either normalize or demonize them when it comes to public perception. What the hell is a hate crime? Aren't all crimes hate crimes? Are there also love crimes that we're not familiar with? People simply fall in line with what they are told is normal and accepted behavior. People are not only allowing cross-dressing trannies to read stories to their children, but they think it's fantastic and that it promotes diversity to allow these demonic creatures to spend time with their children. These same individuals will use phrases like, think of the children, when it comes to things like firearms. People love to be a part of something they view as progressive. They have this down to a science. Cigarette smokers have been demonized. We make sure that they stand far away from everyone else. Many times they are made to stand outside in cold weather and are not allowed within a certain number of feet from normal people. The same people that consume fluoride, get flu shots, and eat foods laced with GMOs on a daily basis will insist that cigarette smokers stay as far away from them as possible. I'm not a smoker, and even I can see how they have essentially become second-class citizens who are looked down upon for being filthy while those judging them consume alcohol and eat at McDonald's. It's not about reality, it's about perception. How many more false flags will it take before enough people start to lean away from the Second Amendment? Remember, they don't need a majority, they just need a very loud and vocal minority willing to make a lot of noise. Why do you think these alleged shootings are taking place at an ever-increasing rate? Have you ever tried to prove that one of these shooters is actually incarcerated in a prison 1, 2, or 3 years later? Where are the follow-up interviews with these individuals by the media once the dust settles? Have you ever seen one of these alleged shooters interviewed or even mentioned a few years after the event? The only images you ever see of them is when they are in a courtroom. After that, they seem to simply vanish. Aurora is replaced with Boston. Boston with Orlando. Orlando with San Bernardino. San Bernardino with Vegas. Vegas with Parkland, and so on. As previously mentioned, they don't need the majority on their side. They only need to make it appear as if the majority is on their side. That's a very simple thing to accomplish when the mainstream media is all controlled and owned by the same individuals. People as a general rule do not like to draw negative attention to themselves. Once the public's perception regarding a specific topic leans one way, standing up and calling bullshit is the best way to find yourself unemployed, shunned, and ostracized. All that needs to be done is for the media to make it appear as if anti-gun is the norm, and to demonize gun owners by shaming them. The process is already well underway. It won't be much longer before society looks at you the same way they look at a man lighting up a cigarette in a waiting room or a movie theater. Once they reach the tipping point, the people themselves do the rest of the work for them by demanding change. Currently, we are in a state of limbo. There is a delicate balance in society in regards to firearms. Common sense, along with the Constitution, makes the entire subject very simple and straightforward. The Second Amendment is not a gift or a privilege. It is a basic fundamental right. However, we no longer live in the age of common sense. We now live in the age of letting our emotions dictate our actions, beliefs, and policy. We allow the media to tell us what is right or wrong, good or bad, and we allow them to tell us that everyone else but you is already on board. We are already seeing a shift in public perception in regards to firearms. Once a right is taken from us, there are very few, if any, examples of us ever getting that right back. A gun grab will not entail jackboot thugs kicking in your front door, armed to the teeth. Society will end up disarming itself. There are many more details involved than what is in this video. This is simply the overall bird's eye view of the method they are using to take away our ability to defend ourselves. Again, they don't need to physically take away all the guns. They simply need the people overall to have an emotional response in order to vilify gun owners and demand that laws be passed. And they're a lot closer than you might think. How many more drills passed off as a real event do you honestly think it's going to take before enough people demand drastic change? How many more Las Vegas-style hoaxes until the dumbed-down public say enough? The media is behind this agenda 100% and will continue to look the people directly in the face and lie to them. There is a breaking point on just how much people can see and hear before they demand that things change, and if for no other reason than so that they don't have to hear about it any longer. If it doesn't reach that point soon, then they will simply turn it up and give us a 9/11 style event with guns being the bad guy instead of cave-dwelling terrorists. The people themselves will take this agenda to the next and final level by demanding that action be taken. Once enough laws are passed, and the right laws are passed, you will no longer have the Second Amendment to stand behind, and will be seen by society as a dangerous felon. The problem is that those that are pro-Second Amendment won't gather and demonstrate in large groups due to a combination of being seen as an evil gun owner that supports the shooting of children once the propaganda reaches a certain point, and because they will be lazy and complacent and just assume that the Second Amendment is written in stone and will always be there. To reiterate, they don't need to take all the guns. They simply need a few high-profile cases, which the mainstream media will gladly provide, where certain hardcore gun owners will be made to look like lunatics who are stockpiling guns and ammunition simply to overthrow the government or commit terrorist acts or mass shootings. Law enforcement will step in and prevent these crazy people from harming more children. This will bring many who are on the fence over to their side. We simply must have stricter gun laws in case any of these maniacs go undetected by law enforcement. This process isn't going to be completed tomorrow. It may not even be completed in 2 years. It will, however, happen at some point. and probably sooner than later. Have you noticed the car attacks suddenly came to a complete stop worldwide? There was a car attack per week for months, and then it all just stopped. Since that time, what have we seen? A drastic increase in these so-called mass shootings. It's pretty clear where they have directed their resources. Once the guns are sufficiently dealt with, the fake automobile attacks will ramp up again and be the next target. We are currently in the beginning stages of a real shitstorm that isn't going to end well for us. And the worst part is, it's not armed law enforcement you need to be preparing for. It's we the people you should be worried about, simply because most of them can't discern real from fake, act on emotions rather than actual data, and refuse to turn off their TVs. If they can normalize this, or demonize this, how difficult will it be to demonize firearms to the point where the people themselves demand they be made illegal? You are now free to troll and attack everything stated in this video. Thank you for watching, and God bless each one of you. Peace.
#trending